Citizens for Modern Transit. On behalf of CMT, I'd like to welcome you to our quarterly Talking Transit event. Today, we'll be discussing transit security, which has been top of mind for many St. Louisans, including everyday riders, occasional riders, and the community at large. I want to thank all of CMT's board members who have joined us this morning. And I'd also like to thank CMT's Platinum and Gold sponsors, including AARP in St. Louis, Bi-State Development, the City of Belleville, Realtor Association of Southwestern Illinois, St. Clair County Transit District, Washington University in St. Louis, BJC Healthcare, Gonzalez Companies, Greater St. Louis Inc., HNTB, Missouri and Kansas Laborers District Council, and ULICO. We would certainly not be able to provide these updates without their support, so thank you very much. I also want to thank all of you for joining us this morning. We're excited to see this turnout to discuss the status of regional safety and security efforts for the transit system and its impacts on the region from the employer perspective, the operators, and the everyday riders. And now I'm going to turn it over to our phenomenal executive director, Kim Sella, to introduce our panel and get this conversation started. Thanks again for joining us. Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Hart, and thank you to everyone who has joined us this morning for this really important conversation. And thank you to our panelists who have agreed to have this conversation with us this morning. Transit safety is a top regional priority. We know that, and this is not a new conversation to Citizens for Modern Transit. We have actually been talking about transit safety and security since 2015. So today, we're going to look at some of those new initiatives underway. We know that leadership continues to take a very active role in addressing challenges and implementing change. As the regional transit organization, we felt that it was really important to have this transparent conversation on where we are and what the new strategies are moving forward. Today, you're going to learn more about the rollout of the metal detector pilot program, increased law enforcement presence, and more. So let's get started this morning. First, let's welcome our panel. We have with us Talby Roach, the president and CEO of Bi-State Development. Welcome, Talby.
Good morning,
Kevin
everybody.
Scott. Good morning, Talby. Kevin Scott, the general manager of security with Bi-State Development. Kathy Osborne, the president and CEO of the Regional Business Council. And Katina Howard, the Vice President of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 788, representing the operators of the system. Welcome to all of you. We know much has been accomplished in recent years relative to safety and security concerns on transit, but there's still work to be done. And as Kevin says to us all the time, this is always going to be something that we're working on. Safety and security will always be a top priority for the transit agency. So we really look forward to this update today and continuing to see our local leaders come together for the greater good of transit riders and the entire St. Louis region. Failure of the transit system is not an option. And whether you ride it or not, the St. Louis region really needs this critical component of the transportation system. So as we begin with some presentations, please make sure to place your questions in the chat box in the Q&A tab, and I will get to them as soon as possible. So let's start by allowing our panelists to provide a 5-minute intro. Then we're going to turn to question and answers. We know that there are a lot of questions the community has right now, and we want to make sure that we provide that forum to have them answered. So Talby, let's start with you. As the CEO and president of Bi-State, where are you with safety and security strategies, and where do you hope to end up in the next year?
So good morning, and thank you so much for the question. You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. What is strategy? Strategy is really something that should be evolving as, of course, our community evolves. St. Louis is very different than it was from 1980s to the 1990s when this system was originally envisioned, to the 2000s. And here we are in 2023. It feels hard to believe that we're even saying that kind of a number. But what we need to be doing is adjusting our security strategy in conjunction with how our ridership is changing and how our community is changing. And so one of the things that I always really like to talk about is how are we gaining consensus and partnership to make our system not just safe, but comfortable. So obviously we're embarking on this very ambitious program, the Secure Platform Project, SPP, where we'll be adding, gates and all kinds of different hardscape to the system to make it safer. But I always like to use, this is one of my favorite slides right now. Travis, I'm going to ask you to put it up. And this is a slide of the real-time camera center. And so as we move forward on the secure platform plan, it's more than just the gates. It's also a fully layered security strategy. And here's one of the great benefits of that. What you're seeing in front of you there is the brand new real-time camera center. And look, let's talk about one of the really key components that I want everybody to see. This is now in operation. This is at our Compton facility, which many of you on the line may not know is in the city of St. Louis. Now, why do I point that out? Because if you look at the uniforms on this, you see St. Louis County Police Department, right? You also see a transit security specialist from Metro. You see one of our supervisors. This is how we will make security work. Look, let's all be honest. Our region has been challenged, and we were challenged 4 years ago when I walked in the door with being sure to reinvigorate these type of relationships with the professional police departments. And I'm very proud to say, and Travis, you can go ahead and take that down, that we have reinvigorated those in a full security strategy that includes the St. Clair County Sheriff's Department, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, St. Louis County Police Department, along with, of course, our teams and our contract security. These are key elements when you want to make strategy work. And look, just like many other regions, we're challenged by some of our bifurcation, and we're trying to overcome that challenge. And look, we were challenged legitimately to be sure that we were going to be professional and be thorough. So that strategy is changing. The one other point I want to make is, look, we think that St. Louis is alone in all of its challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, we are not. This security challenge is hitting many of the urban areas across the country. What makes sense for us to do is see what's been successful with some of our partners and incorporate some of those ideas, albeit with a St. Louis focus, because we know what our region is. So one of the neat things about the Secure Platform Plan, and one of the ways we were able to garner private sector investment in that endeavor, is that camera center will be doubling our camera positions from 900 for when we finish, we'll be up to 1,800 positions. So when I'm giving interviews, and you'll hear a little bit about that, we are being interviewed by other places across the country, Minneapolis, Calgary. We are getting calls about what we are doing in St. Louis. And inevitably, they ask to look at that real-time camera center. It's compelling, it's interesting, and it's something that we owe the public. What I like to say is, ideally, when we finish this, when you're on our system, all of it, including bus, we will see you. And we will add that reassurance where not only is our system going to be safe, but comfortable and constantly evolving. So, Kim, you limited me to 5 minutes. I think I hit it on the head.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that. I was assuming you'd have at least 2 to 3 more minutes. Couldn't find my mute button. So perfect. Thank you very much for the opening remarks, Toby. So now let's turn it over to Kevin Scott, the General Manager of Security for BiSay. Kevin, can you provide a brief overview of the latest initiatives and a quick implementation timeline for those new measures?
Sure. So there's a couple of things I want to cover in the next 5 to 7 minutes. I have 4 specific points, and I'm glad that you made the statement that you did when we started the conversation. There is no end game to security. There is no day where we will say we've implemented all of the facets of security and now we can back away and we don't have to worry about security anymore. Security will be a prolonged challenge for as long as I could possibly anticipate. It's ever evolving. It's coming up with new ways of doing things. It's coming up with original approaches, and it's also adopting approaches being used at other properties around the country. And so this is an immense challenge. If you listen to Gabe Gore, our new circuit attorney, yesterday as he was sworn in, he was very articulate and very forthcoming in the fact that we are in a crisis as a region. And the transportation system is not immune to that. We are certainly citizens of the region. We operate within the region, and we have to make sure that we build as much of a security buffer around our product as we can to offer the safest environment that we can. And nothing that we do in a standalone capacity will work. As Mr. Roach has mentioned, it is a layered approach, not only with personnel, but with technology, with hardscape changes. And don't ever not think that the men and women that work in the public safety dynamic here at Metro Transit, from law enforcement to the internal staff to the contract staff, don't work exhaustively every day to be as creative as possible to face some of these challenges. And so we can talk about overall crime rates. We're less than 1% on MetroLink. We run through some fairly dynamic areas that offer some significant challenges. But again, we're never going to be immune to those challenges, and we're never going to be immune to heat of the moment type actions that we've recently seen, not only here in St. Louis, but also in other areas. So Travis, if you throw up the camera or the picture of the real-time camera center again, just want to talk about that. So I want to talk about the real-time camera center, a brief overview of secured platforms. I want to talk about $500,000 to $750,000 in overtime for law enforcement that Mr. Roach and the administration released to pay officers. And I want to also briefly touch on an approach to metal detectors. This real-time camera center, this is not a rendering. This is a real photograph. When you talk about secured platform plan or the gating and the fencing and the reconfiguration of our closed circuit television structure here at Metro, this is really phase one. This is the starting point. We could not move forward with any of the hardscape changes, any of the gating systems, without having this room operational. This becomes the epicenter or the control center for the gating systems moving forward. So as we talk about secured platforms, remember that is gates, fences, cameras, but there is also a corresponding project being completed to completely overhaul Metro Transit's fare collection system, which on the MetroLink side will tie into the gating system itself. So this is a very cumbersome technological communication type integration. It's not just about gates and fence. We have to make sure that everything works in concert and everything can be controlled from this room. So basically, as Mr. Roach said, we're going to be going from 900 cameras currently to over 1,800 by the time the system is completely built out, the closed circuit television. We are also taking our closed circuit television approach from operational priority to security priority, meaning when it was implemented years and years ago, the placement of cameras didn't necessarily complement overall security needs. And what the industry tells us is the best approach is to build a closed circuit television system out on a security foundation that can complement your operations side as well. And that's what we're doing. So this is the replacement of old cameras, the influx of new digital capability. We have an analytical capability that we can set parameters within the cameras for alerts. We are adding new PTZs, pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. This just doesn't affect MetroLink platforms. This is at the major transit centers, and all the cameras on buses and trains are also being upgraded and replaced. Once that's done, we will have live feed capability into those vehicles. Moving forward away from the real-time camera center, the secured platform plan focuses on the existing MetroLink system, the existing red and blue line. So 38 existing platforms one platform to be under construction at Mid-America Airport. We are not excavating and redoing platforms. We are taking the existing footprints and we are retrofitting high security gating and fencing in locations, complemented by the closed circuit television system, and then also complemented by eventually the integration of the new fare collection system. So we are moving forward with SPP very aggressively. We have established a six phases of implementation. Phase one will go to bid in August of 23 for Emerson Park, JJK, Washington Park, and Southwestern Illinois College, or SWIC as it's commonly referred to. This really is a beta test for the implementation of these new systems. We needed to choose platforms that primarily did not require major engineering reconfiguration or reconcepting. We knew at the conclusion of phase one that we would not have integration with the fare collection system. So we will have to be able to staff those locations with security personnel to make sure that the gates from the very inception have security impact. And this is the ability to learn from this phase. We also have to make sure that the overall technology that will talk to the gates, the Genetec system, which we use, which is an IT system here at Bi-State, which will also carry the conversation between the fare collection system and the gating system, will actually work. And so there's no way to build this in totality and hope at the end of the day that everything works together. It's too cumbersome of a project. So package one will bid in August, and we're hoping to have that completed by end of first quarter 2024. Phase two will be cascading right behind that, and some of the final design is already beginning in phase two. And we're hoping to bid that in November and see the completion of phase two in early summer or end of second quarter 2024. Phase two cuts into the city core, the heart of the city, from Del Mar all the way east to the Civic Center. So Del Mar and the Civic Center will be the bookends of those 7 locations. I have an overall schedule that I'll be happy to put up maybe during the question and answer period to show you that. But we're very excited. There are things that we have to work out. This is really 39 different projects umbrellaed under one title. None of this is easy. We're taking a system that is an open concept system and we're closing it. The next point is, or the next bullet that I'd like to cover is Mr. Roach and our administration has provided the ability for us to pay additional overtime to law enforcement, all 3 of the law enforcement agencies that service our system, St. Louis County, the city of St. Louis, and St. Clair County, through the summer months, to add extra visibility of police on our trains and buses. And we will make sure that we impact obviously both modes of transportation with that. What you do have to understand is there are only so many police to go around, and that's just a fact. And our ability to offer overtime is done on a voluntary basis. It's not a mandatory basis through those law enforcement agencies. So we have to attract the interest of those officers for that added time. So far, we've paid out about 210 hours in overtime, and we're aggressively marketing this so that we can put more visibility on the system. And then lastly, there has been a conversation about metal detectors. And I will tell you that we will never be in a position to create a TSA type metal detection scanning process at every MetroLink platform. It is absolutely not what we should be doing. It will delay connectivity. It will hamper the overall product, and it will take security resources from other areas that we're not prepared to give up. So we have, with the approval of our administration, purchased a portable metal detection system, which will be mobile in a 4-week pilot program at different locations, scanning in an equitable fashion to see what we can learn from mobile devices. And then we'll, depending on what we learn from the pilot program, we will move to probably purchase some additional metal detectors down the road. But I do not want to mislead you. We will not be establishing a TSA type checkpoint at every location. That's a lot of information. So and I know you're getting antsy, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And I'm sure there will be additional questions about all the bullet points you covered this morning. So we will get to those, I promise. So let's move on to Kathy Osborne, the president and CEO of the Regional Business Council. Kathy has been spearheading the efforts from the private sector on the SPP program. Kathy, why is the success of this transit system and these strategies so important to the business sector? And why have you gotten involved in this?
Great to be here, and we're honored to be on the board, and Kim, keep up doing the good work that you are doing. First off, for many people perhaps listening, they use Metro Transit for entertainment, getting to and from sports activities, etc. But you have to understand that for a huge part of the population, it's used to get to school, it's used to get to work, and it's used for things like shopping. And sometimes that's necessity shopping. Transportation is the #1 issue in terms of growing our economy. You have to be able to get people from where they are to where the jobs are. So having a vibrant transit system and a bus system is absolutely essential to the growth of our economy. In some neighborhoods, if there isn't transportation, they can't get to where the jobs are. So there's an urgency to this. You know, when we first started this dialogue, it was really not about what could we do. It was really about meeting with Talby on many, many occasions and talking about, you've got to make the buses and trains safer. It's just absolutely important. It's important for the drivers. It's important for the riders. And it's important for the future of our economy. We've come to look at public safety in 2 ways. It's what are people's perception about public safety, and what's the reality? And Talby's done a super job over time to educate us about that difference. And we have to deal with both. We have to make the trains safer so that perception over time changes. And so out of that conversation became a larger conversation about, could we do a public-private partnership? This is very unique. It's not often done. It was not easy. And out of that came the MetroLink Secure Platform Plan. We were insistent that it be in all 38 platforms. So that's what we've evolved with. We were insistent about it being welcoming, that it appear when people come, that it's a welcoming place to come in, and that it be secure. And out of that, then the St. Clair County executive, he then came forward, as did the mayor of the city of St. Louis and the county executive in St. Louis County. And what they said is, we will dedicate X amount of money to this. And out of that came a $15.5 million challenge. And the private sector stepped up to put the money together with Metro. So we're very excited about the potential. I will tell you, we're rather impatient. That's kind of the difference sometimes between the public and private sectors. Let's get it done now. Because the issues are now. But along the way, Talby and the board of Bi-State decided to make an additional commitment, which was to the secure camera system that you saw. This is very important. And in some recent incidents on trains, I immediately called Talby. I said, what the heck is going on? What really happened in these incidents? And out of that, I learned that that system, that camera system, really played a huge part in immediately identifying the problem, immediately taking action, and immediately bringing in the police to take care of the people that were involved in those particular incidents. So for us, this is essential to the economy. I think people are watching to see how successful this public-private partnership will be. And it's really been an honor to work with Talby and his team on this particular project. They've probably been frustrated with me at times, but we've worked out a positive relationship. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for being here this morning. Now, I'd like to welcome Katina Howard. She's the Vice President of ATU Local 788, and that is the union representing the transit operators and drivers in the St. Louis area. Katina, welcome. Can you tell us why the strategies being discussed this morning are important to your members? A lot of times, we hear from the stakeholders and we hear from the businesses and we hear from riders as the regional transit advocacy organization. But today we wanted to also hear, what are the operators thinking? What are you hearing from operators about these plans, and giving you an opportunity to weigh in?
Good morning, I'm Katina Wilson, and I'll just get right into it, responding to your question. We are sitting in the heart of it. Our operators are their front line. They're the ones who they see it firsthand. They are the support out there, and the real-time camera system, we appreciate it because as we understand, it does come in layers. And we realize that, and we know that Metro and our region realizes that the only way that we can grow this city and change this crisis that we're in is transit is that vessel that helps cities grow, helps cities move. One of our concerns is, as we talk about the layers and how the gating system, the real-time cameras are a part of this change in security, one of the pieces that's truly missing is community, is what I feel. We have to figure out how to engage the community in making our rides safer. So as far as the operators, I have to be honest, they're not in a great place with security, and it's because they're facing it. They're right there in the midst of it. What I can say is some of the security changes that have been implemented, as far as the Metro security team riding along as on the buses, but the answer to it, as far as getting more officers, the amount of money that has been put into overtime, we know that there's a manpower shortage, and we know that these are things that this has been our answer on a number of occasions when we get to this point of security, because we have a major issue. People don't feel safe on our system. We understand that Metro is working hard to try to change it, but it's right now it's just a little rough for the operators. So for me, their representation to get on this platform and say, oh, the operator are, happy with where security is. We understand that it's a process that's growing. We see the changes that they're attempting to make, but we also know that we have to engage the community in this, and we have to get all eyes on this situation. So that's just a piece that I think needs to be added in there. I'm not going to go on and on, because 788 right now with security, we don't have a whole lot of great things to say. We do see the changes, but this system didn't get this way overnight. And I believe that the work is being put in. Do I think a little more can be put in? But that's just the hat that I wear. Yeah. So based on, we're going to get more officers. We know it's a manpower shortage. We just feel like there's just a little bit more that we can dig into this. And I think that community piece is the piece that's missing, because the problem in our system is not our operators. It's not our security officers. The problem in our system is some of our passengers, and we love our passengers, but right now we have to get them engaged and make them understand how important it is to make transit safe if we want our cities to grow. And we need Metro to just pay a little more attention to the operators and the place that they're sitting in, because they are frontline. And we are dealing with legislation right now. Kim knows that we're fighting in Jeff City to try to keep our public with guns off of our buses. Yet our security officers are out there trying to protect us without guns. So that's just, we see the layers, we see what they're trying to do. However, it's not happening fast enough for us, because we're sitting in the midst of it. So
thank you, Katina, for your frank conversation this morning about where we're at with safety and security from the perspective of the operators. And I think that opens it up right now to the opportunity for those who are in attendance this morning on the webinar. If you'd like to place your questions or your comments in the Q&A in the chat box, we already have some. So I'm going to jump right into the moderated conversation. Let's start, Kathy, by going back to you. And I think the theme so far is we're not working, we got to work faster, right? Everyone wants this delivered yesterday, whatever that thing is. So Kathy, what would you view as success from the business sector with the strategies discussed this morning for safety and security? How do you think we can engage on top of that with other employers in the region around transit? So what would you view from the business sector as success? And then how do we bring in more employers to this conversation and discussion around transit? You're on mute. We love Zoom. We've been doing it for 3 years and it's still.
I think success in large part, is ridership. Are people riding the trains? And that's a national problem, but we've got to deal with what we have here. So that's a clear indicator. People will not ride the trains if they do not feel or perceive that it is safe. So that's there. I think employers have been very clear about how important infrastructure is. And so I think that you have the business community who say, we've got to get this done. It's essential public responsibility. And I think a lot, Katina, I really enjoyed your comments and very nice to meet you this morning. We share the same impatience, coming from different perspectives, but coming to the same place. So I think that you have the business community advocating for and clear about how we need this kind of transfer. I mean, think about it for a second. How do people get to hospitals for their jobs when a lot of the hospitals happen to exist further into St. Louis County? How do you get people to jobs that are in the city? So that ability to give people, and right now when you are so searching for more people, then if the holdup is you're ready to hire, but they can't get to the job, that's a real big problem.
Okay.
And I think that's what we're trying to work with, in this case, with Bi-State and Metro Transit, to be encouraging and helpful in any way that we can.
Thank you, Kathy, very much for those comments. So let's talk a little bit, Katina, if we feel like there's successful implementation of these security strategies, and you touched on it a little bit, that you are seeing changes, but we need to speed them up, and this would impact the environment for the operators. How do you think the successful implementation of these security strategies could impact recruitment efforts that are currently underway for operators? We know this is a constant conversation right now, that we have an operator shortage, not just here in St. Louis, not just in the state of Missouri, but across the country when it comes to transit operators, and that's impacting service levels and frequency. So how do you think successful implementation of these security strategies, do you think it would impact recruitment at all? Or so what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I always use an example of, I like to tell people, just, drive down the street, get on the highway, drive on out 55, and the guy with the bag and the dog is on the side of the highway. Just pull over and open your door and let them ride. That's what operators do every day. So when I say for a security, you have, again, I say it's community engagement. You have to have the prep of security on the system. And as far as recruitment, it's going to take, I always say we're wired different, because most people can't let a stranger get behind their head. And I drove for a number of years, and who they are, or what they're doing, especially in this time. So not only does your security have to be on point, it takes your management strategies, and it's going to take a lot more than security. It's security, it's the wage, it's the way that the operators are treated, but security is a big piece of it. If you can't come to work and know that you're gonna go home in the same shape that you came, it's hard to get anybody to do this job. So when we're in this place, what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to truly make it worth people even applying for the job. So that's the hardest part right now with labor, is that they just don't believe the reward is worth, the risk is worth the reward. The risk is too high. Wages as far as the job security, as far as security for people to really apply for. It's a hard hill right now. It's a hard place, especially as a labor organizer, when you're trying to encourage people to continue to stay in the seat, to do the job proficiently, to be professional. And if you want somebody that's going to come here, have the ability to de-escalate situations, have the ability to come in a great place every day. One, you have to pay them to do that. Two, you have to make it a place where they're not fearful of walking through the door and being terminated, and that they know once they get on that bus, they're going to go home. Our operators seen one of our guys come to work and not go home in the same shape. We're seeing it all the time. So security definitely has to step up. There has to be, and we see the changes, we see the real-time camera, but on top of that real-time camera, you talk about the assistance that from your labor that supports that real-time camera. And where we're putting money at security and we're putting money at real-time cameras, we have to also put that money in the hands of labor if we really want to get people out here who enjoy driving the bus. Because one thing I can say is I enjoy driving the bus. A lot of people may not say it, but I enjoy getting out there, meeting different people. I've met some of my now best friends just simply going to AT&T, getting off. That was our customer base. We were carrying the people from AT&T. We were carrying the people from AG Edwards. We were carrying people who wanted to actually ride the system. We've gotten rid of all of our express routes. Some of the options that were even there, we can't do anymore because we don't have the manpower to pull it off. So I think there, as far as recruitment, we got a lot of variables there, and security is.
Thank you, Katina, very much.
You know,
A comprehensive.
if I could,
Sure.
I get reports. I've asked for reports from Talby and the team on what are the actual stats in terms of the crime that may or may not be occurring on the train. Where are we at in terms of the stats over time, Talby? I'd be curious.
Yeah, so actually over time, we're relative to other municipal entities, which is we compare very favorably in the actual crime rate, okay? But again, Kathy, you brought up the point of also what is perception, okay? And this is a very complex milieu that also involves how our, and Madam Vice President, thank you for bringing that up, that also the literally how are our frontline employees feeling in this situation. And I really appreciate bringing up the community aspect, because we're only part of our St. Louis community. This is a greater venture that we should be looking at. And the point that I'd like to make in that layer, Kathy, is that, yeah, although statistically our transit system actually compares very well across the country, our frontline curb appeal needs to continue to improve. I have no problem with having these conversations and these valuable critiques, because they just help us get better. I mean, the reality is we do have to support that business community, that operator who shows up at that 4:30 a.m. shift and wants to feel safe and go home, raise their family and be happy. Those are, and of course, the folks who depend on our system. Those are all very, very important. And all of these issues need to be attacked and attacked aggressively.
Thank you. So Kathy, I think great question. That was my next question for you, Kevin, and I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. Is this a perception issue? Have there been an increase in incidents? And what is your goal with these programs?
Sure. So where we sit right now, we're working to produce our first quarter numbers for 23. But where we currently sit is far less than 1% of incidents on MetroLink on the system itself. Comparably to the broader communities, we sit in a very solid position. We will never be able to articulate to this panel or to the people watching that we will reach a point of euphoria where we will have nothing happen. We will always have to face challenges. That's just unrealistic. And, you know, any security director or police chief would tell you the same thing. But all of these layers work in concert to mitigate as many problems as we can. I do want to go back to talk about the perception, especially from the operator standpoint. We will also never be in a position to put a police officer or a security guard on every train or bus during the totality and the length of revenue service. So we're trying to create as many opportunities to put law enforcement on the system. At the end of the day, the security elements on Metro Transit serve a purpose for rider engagement, for code of conduct enforcement, but law enforcement, the visibility of police on our system, that's what impacts the perception and makes people feel more comfortable. And that's what we'll continue to build. We operate within a federal compact that only allows certain things from the security elements on Metro Transit, as you're aware. The deployment of firearms is one of those things that are prohibited. Only law enforcement officers, post-certified law enforcement officers per the federal compact can carry firearms on the system. So we operate in a very unique situation here within the St. Louis region in this bi-state setting that we have to follow the rules, but we're trying to be as creative as possible to provide as much visibility and fluidity from the security assets to include law enforcement. Law enforcement can be a bit of a challenge because everybody wants them, and there's only so many of them to go around. So that is a constant struggle to try to get to where we need to be with law enforcement visibility. The other thing that I'd like to point out is our contract security team has the primary footprint for MetroLink, but our internal security team, our transit security specialists, and there are currently 52 people employed on this internal team. Their primary focus on a daily basis is on the bus operation side to ride what we deem as problematic routes, to engage as many of the operators and riders as possible. And also we have transit security specialists covering and visible at many of the major transit centers. We have taken our bus operation areas, which is vast. Okay, it covers three major political subdivisions, and we have divided those into zones, and we have put transit security specialists out in a zoned fashion in those areas to try to more expeditiously respond to things that occur. We are not law enforcement. We are not in a position to drive with lights and sirens. That is profoundly prohibited by law. And so along with what we're trying to do with our internal staff and blanketing the area, we're trying to build more concert and collaboration with not only the three primary law enforcement agencies, but the municipal agencies as well that cover the area. So look, it is a process every day. And it'll always be a challenge. We'll just have to continue to work in that direction.
Thank you, Kevin. And I think you just actually touched on one of the questions that we received, just G4S public safety ride Metro bus. And so you just answered that it is the internal security force that is covering the Metro bus system as well. Tolby, there was a clarifying question that I want to get to before we jump to the next question that we have. But did you say that Bi-State will spend $500,000 to $1 million in overtime to pay the 3 law enforcement partners? Could you quantify how much additional is being placed in overtime for law enforcement on the system this summer?
Yes, the actual number is $750,000. So we have committed to that. That is within the current budget. And that's the kind of flexibility we want to add to the system, especially if with the officer availability. We have the most availability probably in St. Louis County just because of staffing, and it's the largest resource, and also probably St. Clair County right now. But we see that as a good way to kind of hit the summer months and be flexible. And so we'll be doing that through the summer period.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about something that was identified as a central component of the system security in the 2019 security assessment report. Fare enforcement. Outside of the SPP project, what's been done to address fare enforcement on the system? What does that look like?
Do you want me to take that question?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So currently, obviously, our dynamic is we do not have fare enforcers at every platform, at every entrance to every platform. The gating system will change that dynamic. Okay. The gating system and the integration of the new fare collection technology will change that dynamic going forward. But we have the alignment zoned, if you're talking specifically MetroLink, and we have fare enforcers assigned to each zone. They are allied security or contract employees. We are able to cite people and put those citations into an adjudication process in all three of the major political subdivisions. And so most of the fare checking now that is being done is on the trains as they work through those zones.
Great. Thank you very much. So the next question, Toby, I think this one is for you, and I think Kathy touched on it earlier, and it's showing up in our Q&A and chat box, is that it's not just about safety and security measures. It's also about building ridership back on the system. The more people, and I think Katina touched on it as well, the more people that we can get on the bus and trains riding the system, the more eyes, as we talk about in the public safety realm, the safer the system will become. And what we're hearing is increased frequency could impact ridership numbers and drive them up. I know that we've talked about operator shortages and other things like that. And so one of the questions that is out there is, how are you addressing the operator shortage from the CEO perspective? And how will that eventually impact frequency, which could lead to impacts on ridership as well?
Sure. Yeah. Right now, there's no doubt. And we are moving essentially on a crisis basis, essentially with how far down we are on our fundamental employment. And let me just shout out to our current employees, because they're the ones who are carrying the load. They're working the double overs. They're working 6, sometimes 7 days a week. These folks are making it happen. They deserve our respect and admiration for that. But yes, we are down employees, much like across the country and in the private sector, close to 200 operators right now. So we have been having very successful job fairs on the weekends. Includes a $2,000 signing bonus. 788, for instance, has partnered with us on a mentoring program. Look, our labor partners have been fabulous. Katina can relate this. She also pushes me. I'm comfortable with that. Should be pushing me. We should be moving in and figuring out how to move those benefits up along with wages. We're under current contract negotiations for an extension. We did have a 5% raise this year, very much like a lot of our municipal partners. And I'm proud of our wage rates overall. They sit very solidly compared across the country, but we need to continue to bolster that so that, you know, this is a good living, and we have folks who work very hard and should be admired for that. And that includes full benefit package, full health benefits. We had the best bonus program associated with the pandemic because our folks still showed up and went to work. But we need to continue to push that envelope as best we can, still make our budget. Look, I still need to make a budget, of course. I'm sure everybody can understand that. But we need to find that sweet spot where we're continuing to recruit. I'm not going to say that we don't still have a crisis. Yes, we do. We're still down drivers. We've had some very successful classes lately, mostly by partnering and leaning in, and we're going to continue to do that.
Great, thank you very much. So Toby, just one more add-on question, and I think this is really important. Let's talk a little bit about ridership. It's my understanding that ridership is actually seeing an uptick on our system on both MetroLink and Metro Bus. Can you talk a little bit about where we are with ridership numbers?
Yeah, that is actually accurate. We are an incremental movement up in ridership. As a matter of fact, year to date in Illinois, they're up nearly 8% in bus ridership. And I think that has to do with some very successful moves by St. Clair County and in tuning some individual bus routes and so on. So we're seeing evidence of an incremental recovery. That means that these kind of curb appeal issues, as far as the best that we can do on frequency, and I don't want to commit to that yet until I have the operators to do it, because I can't, but also the investments in safety and security and getting as much efficiency as possible. So also then concurrently, the Missouri side is seeing similar recovery numbers, although not as strong as Illinois in this last year to date. We were seeing, I think it was a 5% uptick year to date on MetroLink. So the numbers are good and positive, and they're moving, albeit in a pretty gradual curve, but in the good direction. However, I do want to point out that some of the fundamental economic movement of St. Louis in the nature of jobs has fundamentally changed. We are different than what we were in 2017. We have much more of a very dominant reverse commute. So for instance, folks who live in the city or going out to jobs in the county, we heard a lot of this from, for instance, and Kathy, from your members from the business community who were struggling to get employees out to their locations in out parts of the county. So we're seeing kind of a more downtown, more of a diffuse economic situation as our city is changing. And that means that these kind of investments in safety and security and operators are very, very important. We need to have a system that's responsive to that. Thank you.
So the next question, and I think that this is a really, really critical question. You know, we've talked about for 6-7 years, safety and security, and part of the conversation has been that some of the incidents that occur on our system, or a lot of the incidents, are really not law enforcement issues, but they're mental health issues. And how do we address mental health issues on the system? And you know, I think that the St. Louis region and Metro Transit and the St. Clair County Transit District have actually been cutting edge when it comes to mental health on the transit system. So one of the questions that just came in is, are the mental health workers making a difference at the Metro stations they serve? Can someone talk a little bit about that Chestnut Health program that's underway and where we're at with that program?
So I'm going to, just because I'm excited, sorry, Kevin, but
Kevin, I'll let you jump in too if he doesn't cover all your bullet points.
The Chestnut Health is actually putting mental health professionals on our system in conjunction with our security system, because look, a true layered and professional security system includes where we're helping people. Okay. It started as a pilot in Illinois, St. Clair County, great, terrific, innovative idea, but we have now expanded that to both sides of the system. We've made a budgetary commitment to this in excess of $1.5 million, where this is actually putting mental health professionals on our system. As simple as helping the unhoused population, being sure that folks get resources. Very interestingly, Our police partners are very welcoming of this because they can concentrate on being police, whereas then the other resources that mental health professionals bring to bear, help the community. Because after all, this is about community. It's not just one thing or another. Our community is diverse and has all kinds of different needs and backgrounds. And we need to be sure that we design a system that is flexible and serves those different needs. The Chestnut Health, which is now nationally recognized, what a great partner they are. And we're going to continue to make that investment.
Thank you, Toby. Kevin, did you want to add anything to that?
No, he really said it all. They, just to give you an idea of the kind of the logistics of how they operate. Again, this pilot originally started in St. Clair County. They built a relationship with Chestnut Health, which is based in Illinois. We watched as that pilot grew in St. Clair County. And one of the important things to point out here is that we have one fluid system. We don't have three separate systems. And so the efforts being made, the projects or the programs implemented need to be implemented system-wide in the totality of our operation. And so we were very excited to build off of that platform, off of that pilot that the St. Clair County Transit District put in place initially to expand that. So right now we're sitting with basically 4 teams. 2 teams of 2 people in Illinois and two teams of 2 people in Missouri. And there is a 3rd team that will be implemented in St. Clair County to cover some of the bus lines over there as well. So hopefully I didn't announce that too early. However, I think it's going very well. Listen, at the end of the day, they bring to the table an expertise and resources that we just do not have. When you talk about comprehensive and holistic public safety, it's not just about cops and security guards. It's about the totality of your security infrastructure, your technologies, and the ancillary resources that you bring to the table to support people that are in need. And you know as well as I do, and everybody on this call knows this, that there are people that we deal with every single day that are in profound need of mental health help. They are involved with narcotics, they have addictions. Those are things that we cannot address, but we can help support that as well. One of the main catalysts of violent crime in our area, and this is from almost 27 years in law enforcement, and I profoundly believe this is if we can cut down on drugs and drug trafficking in our area, it will profoundly affect the violent crime rate that has grown to a significant crisis, as, like I said, Mr. Gore pointed out yesterday in his comment. So there are a lot of things that we can do to mitigate overall security in the region. And going back to Mrs. Howard's comment about community, it is about community, but one of the things that the dynamics that we face on a public safety level is region-wide. And as the region gets safer, that makes our product safer.
Thank you. So safety and security it also includes kind of that broken window theory, right? So there's a couple questions that we have and a shout out that your team includes mechanics and maintenance. So there's a big shout out to the mechanics who are doing a super job keeping the actual fleet and the system maintained well beyond what the FTA calls their useful life. So that's fantastic. But there's also some questions in Colorado. Yes, there's also some questions about, that whole broken window theory. We have some elevators or escalators that might be out, or some of our stations are looking a little dated. What is the maintenance plan? How will the agency stay on top of the maintenance issues that give people the perception that maybe that, the system isn't as crisp as it was 20 years ago?
So I think I'm on deck on that one. So,
yeah, I think so.
So one of the really great announcements, and I hope all of you saw on the paper, that we recently secured $196 million in federal funding to replace our existing rail car fleet. It's been a great fleet. Siemens is a great manufacturer, great partner. And of course, right, we have all those mechanics who've done a great job to get as much as we can out of that rolling stock. And that includes on the rubber tired side as well. We have a nationally recognized maintenance crew, and that was recognized by the feds in getting the #1 grant for rolling stock replacement. So we will be contracting for those, and they'll be in manufacture, and that will really freshen up all of the system from the Metrolink side. We're going to continue to make those investments on the bus side. Of course, we had a very successful electric bus deployment, and with the 60-foot New Flyer buses on the number 70 grant, or #1 bus line. And that's been going well. So we're going to continue to make those investments. But it is very true that we had some trouble and have some existing trouble on the systems through the supply chain associated with elevators. I am very frustrated myself. I wish we could move faster on those. But we have been making some progress lately. And for instance, we restored the elevator at Forest Park, which was very key after that major flood damage. And we're going to continue to do that. But I want to recognize we are not satisfied with the performance of those elevators right now. Actually, I was talking to Rhonda Ham-Niebrigge, the great director of Lambert Airport, in getting help with that, with the Terminal 2 elevator there. And we're really leaning hard on getting that done, and certainly by July, by the first week in July. So these are really actually very relevant points. We need to continue to put the pressure on and keep working through these important infrastructure issues.
Thank you, Tommy. So we're coming to the end of our time this morning, and I wanted to make sure that we get this question in. I think that this is really important. If our audience takes away nothing else from this webinar this morning, what is the key message from each of you to the audience on transit safety and security of the system, the topic that we've brought forth this morning? Why don't we go ahead, Kathy, and we'll start with you from the business sector. What is your key takeaway this morning?
Having a vibrant public transportation system is absolutely imperative for the growth of the economy. So this is something that we all share in. And I can't think of anything more important to the economy than getting people from where they are to the jobs. And I think a lot of our population, they're in low income communities. The kinds of jobs they may be going to are jobs where you need to be physically present. The nurse needs to be on the ward. The mechanic needs to be in the mechanic shop. So I think we just need to remember how terribly important this is. And it goes really beyond whether we're going to get to the baseball game on time, which is a great thing. And it's a very efficient way to get there. But there are some other concerns that are terribly important to have a vibrant system.
Thank you, Kathy. Katina, we're going to turn to you next. What is your final takeaway this morning for the audience on transit safety and security?
My final takeaway, and one of the things I wanted to just kind of add to the conversation is that community piece. We can put real-time cameras out. We can put mobile radar detectors out. But we have two great community organizations out here who are standing in the midst of it. I don't think that Metro is working with either one of them, which is Better Family Life as well as Urban League. Those are people who have a foothold in this community, who I think would be a great vessel to be a part of this security measure. They understand it. They live in the community, have vested interest in the community, have a business in the community. Also, I just believe that we know the work has to be put in. We know that the work, you guys are working toward it. It takes much more than security to keep transit running. You have to put the attention on your frontline workers. They're a big piece of security, making sure that you have the right people in that bus seat, making sure that the necessary training is there. And I think it's a great system that we can make work. Right now, it's just problems. We have an epidemic out here. We have to look at the people who can actually help and have a vested interest, have the ability to reach our customer base. And I think that's the piece that's truly missing in this security plan.
Thank you, Katina. Kevin, your final thoughts on, since this is your area of expertise?
Yeah, so I've offered a lot of thoughts today, both of my original comments and in some of the answers. And I think the important thing to understand is that we have deconstructed a public safety dynamic that was not working here and reconstructed a very professional footprint. We have vetted and really are competing on an industry best practices level with some of the tactics that we're using. I wish I could put a security guard and police officer on every bus or train 24/7, but I just can't do it. That would greatly impact security. It's just not realistic. But I do believe that all of the layers that we're working to put together, the professionalism that's being enthrust into this holistic and comprehensive plan will pay dividends. But we will see as we improve our broader public safety footprint in our region. And you're talking to someone who's grown up here in St. Louis and has a vested interest in the success of the city and everything that we're doing to see the region grow. We have to have a more regional perspective on addressing some of these interesting dynamics that we face. I was recently in Nashville, Tennessee over the weekend, and if you want to see an area where there is a completely different dynamic and approach, we could learn a lot from the Nashville metro area.
Thank you, Kevin. And maybe that's our homework. So last, but finally, and definitely not least, Talby, do you have a key takeaway for our audience this morning on safety and security of the system?
So quite frankly, keep pushing. If we need to get somewhere as part of the solution to, a greater St. Louis, that means that we can be part of that solution. I think of that every single day. I want to think of our frontline employees, of course, of the public that we serve. Look, we're doing this for a reason. We care about our community, and I think we need to keep push that envelope. We've earned the trust, but now we need to execute. And that means we need to show up and answer hard questions and continue to do it. And look at those critiques, always look at how we can improve. How can we make our community better, all the way from the bottom to the top?
Thank you. So thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. And thank you for answering some of these difficult questions in a public forum. We really appreciate the transparency on this really important topic to the region and taking questions from riders and others and stakeholders about what is happening with transit safety and security and where do we go from here. So I also want to thank everyone who has joined us this morning for the discussion. A recording of today's panel will be posted to our YouTube channel later this morning, and the efforts will continue. They will be ongoing. As Kevin said, this is not something that's going to be finished tomorrow or a month from now or a week from now. So we will continue to advocate and push on the safety and security efforts. The other couple other things that we want to mention this morning, there is a virtual Metrolink forum tonight. So you can weigh in virtually this evening as well, talking about the future of public transit on Metrolink expansion. There's a county virtual forum around the north side, south side, North St. Louis County connector. So if you are interested, you can go to our website at cmt-stl.org and weigh in on that. There will also be information on the website on our upcoming webinar on June 27th on Metrolink expansion. We're going to talk a little bit more in detail about those 4 possible routes in North St. Louis County. What does that look like? What is your opinion? Where should Metrolink go next? So we will be having that conversation on June 27th. We will also be opening this summer our latest transit transformation, going to that conversation we just had about the broken windows. Is there a way that we can change what a station looks like to make it more a part of the fabric of the community? and have that conversation. So you'll see the Fifth and Missouri transformation hopefully open by the end of July this summer. And finally, join us. If you're not a member of Citizens for Modern Transit, this is important stuff for the region, well beyond that ride from point A to point B. So consider becoming a member of Citizens for Modern Transit if you're not. And finally, for a little bit of fun, we have a summer campaign. So if you see our own St. Louis homegrown professional midfielder, Miggy Perez, out on the system, make sure you snap a selfie, tag CMT, and you'll be entered into a drawing to reap more rewards, because what a great way to get there, whether it's work, play, or match day. Have a great day, everyone. Make it a good one, and we'll see you later. Thank you.